Savannah Carter had never known struggle. Born into old Texas money, her life was a world of polished boots, grand estates, and whispered judgments. Her family name carried weight in Dallas, ensuring doors always opened. Respect was given without question, and hard work was something other people did. She spent her days riding her prize stallion across miles of private land, attending elite country club gatherings, and never once questioning the world she lived in. People like Jackson Cole existed in the background, hardened by the sun, hands rough from labor, skin darker than the men who shook her father's hand at business deals. He was just a ranch hand, someone hired to work the land her family owned. She never spoke to him. She barely even looked at him. And yet, something about him irritated her. His steady confidence, the way he carried himself like he belonged, when she knew he didn't. One humid afternoon, as Savannah adjusted her sun hat near the stables, she caught the sound of Jackson's voice. "You ever wonder what it's like to earn what you have?" His tone was calm, but the meaning behind it cut sharp. Savannah froze for half a second before scoffing and turning away. What a ridiculous question. People like her didn't need to earn anything. The Texas sun hung high in the sky, casting golden light over the vast Carter estate. Acres of pristine land stretched as far as the eye could see, dotted with thoroughbred horses and towering oak trees. The grand white mansion, with its polished columns and perfectly manicured lawns, stood as a symbol of power and old Southern wealth. Inside, Savannah Carter adjusted the brim of her designer sun hat and took a slow sip of iced tea, watching ranch hands move about the stables from the comfort of her shaded porch. Her life had always been one of ease. She had never worried about money, never questioned the way things worked. Hardship was a story told by those who hadn't been born into the right family. And race? That wasn't something she needed to think about. Sure, she had heard whispers of change, of protests in other cities, of people demanding to be treated differently. But here, on Carter land, the world was simple. Everyone had a place, and Jackson Cole's place was in the stables, working for a family like hers. Savannah never spoke to Jackson. She never had to. He was just another worker, a face in the background of her perfect life. Yet, something about him always stood out. The way he carried himself, his quiet defiance, the way he met her gaze without looking away. She told herself it was arrogance. It irritated her, but deep down it unsettled her. One afternoon, as she strolled past the stables, she caught the sound of his voice. "Privilege is invisible to those who have it," Jackson said, his tone calm but firm. Savannah frowned. She wasn't sure who he was speaking to, but something about those words made her uneasy. She wanted to dismiss it, to shake off the strange discomfort crawling up her spine. What did he know about privilege? Some people were just meant to be on top. It wasn't her fault she was one of them. Before we dive deeper into Savannah's journey, let's take a moment to pray for guidance, love, and an open heart. God, bless those who seek the truth, soften hearts burdened by hate, and guide us toward understanding. May we learn to love beyond differences and embrace kindness in all its forms. Protect those who fight for justice, and fill us with wisdom to see the world with clear eyes. Amen. If you believe in love and justice, type Amen in the comments. Have you ever been forced to confront an uncomfortable truth? What did you do? The sun burned hot against the Texas sky, casting long shadows over the Carter estate. The scent of dust and leather filled the air as Savannah walked toward the stables, her boots clicking against the wooden planks. She wasn't here to work. She never had to. She was here out of boredom, perhaps to saddle her horse for a short ride before heading back inside where the air conditioning and sweet iced tea waited. But then she saw him, Jackson Cole, his shirt damp with sweat, his strong hands tightening the saddle on one of the ranch's best stallions. His movements were effortless, precise, like he had done this 1,000 times before. He didn't acknowledge her. He never did, unless necessary. That suited her just fine. But something about his presence, about the way he never fawned over her the way other men did, irritated her more than she cared to admit. Maybe it was the way he carried himself, not like a man who worked for a family, but like a man who owned every inch of ground he stepped on. "You're doing that wrong," she said casually, leaning against a wooden railing, watching him tighten the saddle. She didn't know why she spoke. Maybe to remind him of his place. Maybe because the silence between them was suffocating. Jackson paused, glanced at her for the briefest moment, then went back to his work. "I doubt that," he said, his voice steady, uninterested. Savannah narrowed her eyes. "Excuse me." Jackson sighed, finishing his task before finally turning to face her. This horse has carried more weight than you ever have. I think he'll be fine. Savannah felt her chest tighten, caught between anger and something else, something unfamiliar. That's rude, she said, folding her arms. I don't mean it to be, he replied, wiping his hands on a rag. Just speaking the truth. Savannah's mouth opened, then closed. She wasn't used to this. People didn't talk to her like that, especially not people like him. What truth? She challenged. Jackson's dark eyes met hers, unwavering. That you've never had to earn anything a day in your life. That you think you can tell me how to do my job without ever doing it yourself. The word stung more than they should have. Savannah wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong, but deep down, she wasn't sure she believed that herself. So instead, she scoffed, flipping her hair over her shoulder. I don't need to earn anything, she said, her voice sharper than intended. Some people are just born into a better life. Jackson studied her for a long moment, then shook his head. And some people live their whole lives blind to the world around them. Savannah didn't know why those words followed her all the way back to the house, but they did. The Carter family dinner table was a sight of old Southern wealth. Polished silverware, crystal glasses filled with sweet tea, and a roast carved to perfection. Savannah sat in her usual place, across from her father, Henry Carter, a man whose presence alone commanded respect. He had built his fortune from generations of landowning and cattle trading, and he carried himself like a man who believed his name meant something. Her mother, Eleanor, sat beside him, her pearls resting neatly against the collar of her expensive dress, her posture as perfect as her carefully curated life. Savannah had grown up in this world, one where tradition ruled above all else. But tonight, something felt different. Something inside her had shifted. The words Jackson had said at the stables earlier that day echoed in her mind, clashing against the voices around her. Her father's deep voice broke her thoughts. I heard the mayor's pushing some diversity nonsense in the city. Want to change hiring policies, mix things up. Can you believe that? He shook his head, cutting into his steak. This country's gone soft. People these days want handouts instead of earning their place. Savannah swallowed, her throat suddenly dry. She had heard talk like this before, countless times, but tonight it made her uncomfortable in a way it never had before. Eleanor sighed, dabbing her lips with a napkin. It's a shame, really. We built this town, this community. Some people don't understand their place anymore. Savannah's stomach twisted. She knew exactly what her mother meant. People like Jackson, her brother, William, leaned back in his chair. I saw one of the ranch hands getting mouthy with some of the guys today, forgetting who signs their paycheck. He chuckled. Might be time to remind them. Savannah felt her pulse quicken. Maybe, she said, her voice hesitant. Maybe they just want a little respect. The table went silent. Her father set his knife down with a quiet clink against his plate. What did you just say? Savannah shifted in her seat, her face warm under the weight of their stares. I just mean maybe they work just as hard as we do. Maybe they deserve. Savannah, Eleanor cut in, her tone sharp. We don't entertain foolish ideas like that in this house. Her father leaned forward, his expression unreadable. You sound like one of those college kids who think the world is unfair just because they read a book about it. Let me tell you something. Sweetheart, the world isn't fair. It never has been. Some people win, some people lose. That's life. Savannah felt a tightness in her chest. She had believed that once. Maybe she still did. But then why did Jackson's words haunt her? Why did she suddenly feel as if everything she'd been raised to believe was built on something fragile, something that could shatter with the slightest pressure? She looked down at her plate, appetite gone. For the first time in her life, she wasn't sure she belonged at this table anymore. The Texas heat had been relentless all week, and today was no different. The air shimmered above the dry dirt roads, dust swirling with every movement. Savannah had spent the afternoon riding to the farthest part of the ranch, eager for an escape from the suffocating expectations of home. But as she neared the west pasture, something caught her eye. Jackson stood near the wooden fence, his back turned to her. But he wasn't alone. A young stable boy, barely 12, sat on the ground, cradling his ankle. The boy's face was streaked with tears, his expression tight with pain. His horse stood nearby, its reins dragging in the dust. Savannah pulled her horse to a stop, watching. Breathe, kid. Jackson said gently, crouching beside him. It's just a sprain. Nothing that won't heal. The boy sniffled, nodding. I didn't mean to fall. I thought I had control. Jackson smiled, a rare sight. Control isn't about never falling. It's about getting back up. He pulled off his bandana, tying it carefully around the boy's ankle for support. Think you can stand? The boy hesitated, then reached for Jackson's extended hand. With a slow inhale, he pulled himself up, leaning on Jackson for balance. Thank you, he muttered. Savannah felt something stir inside her, something unsettling. She had seen Jackson work before, seen him ride and handle the animals with unmatched skill. But this was different. This wasn't strength. It was kindness, and it made her realize something. She had never seen her father, her brother, or any of the other men on this ranch do what Jackson just did. They commanded, they expected, but they never knelt in the dirt to help someone who had fallen. Jackson glanced up then, his sharp eyes locking onto hers. She hadn't even realized she had been staring. Something wrong, Miss Carter? His voice was steady, but there was something in it, something challenging. Savannah swallowed, dismounting her horse. No, she said, though she wasn't sure if that was true. She hesitated before speaking again. That was good of you, what you did for him. Jackson raised an eyebrow. Good of me? She shifted uncomfortably. I just mean, most men wouldn't have stopped. They would have told him to get up and walk it off. Jackson leaned against the fence, studying her. And what do you think? Savannah hesitated. She had always been taught that weakness was something to be hardened out of a person, not coddled. But watching Jackson just now, she didn't see weakness. She saw something else, something stronger than anything her father had ever shown her. I think, she exhaled, shaking her head. I think I don't know what I think anymore. For a moment, Jackson said nothing. Then he nodded, as if he understood something she didn't. Maybe that's a good place to start, he said. Savannah turned away, but Jackson's words followed her. Maybe it was a good place to start. Have you ever seen something so clearly that you couldn't ignore it anymore? The storm rolled in without warning. Thick, black clouds swallowed the sky, turning day into an eerie twilight. The wind howled through the ranch, kicking up dust and debris as the first drops of rain slammed against the dry earth. Savannah had seen storms before, but nothing like this. This wasn't just a summer downpour. It was nature's fury unleashed. She had been out riding when it hit, too far from the house to turn back. Her horse whinnied in panic beneath her, hooves skidding against the shifting ground. A bolt of lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating the darkened landscape for a split second. She needed to find shelter fast. But before she could react, the wind roared with new force, knocking a dead tree loose from a hillside above. It splintered as it crashed, and Savannah had only a moment to register the sound before her horse reared violently, throwing her to the ground. Pain shot through her side as she hit the hard dirt. Her vision blurred, her ears rang. She tried to get up, but the world spun, the storm consuming everything around her. Then, through the chaos, a voice cut through. Savannah! She blinked, barely making out the silhouette, moving toward her through the dust and rain. Strong hands gripped her arms, lifting her with ease. Jackson, you're hurt, he said, his voice firm but urgent. Can you stand? She nodded, though the throbbing in her ribs said otherwise. We have to move, he said, his hand steady against her back, guiding her forward. There's a storm shelter near the stables. Can you make it? Savannah swallowed, her body trembling, not just from the cold, but from something deeper. Jackson wasn't just saving her. He was risking himself to do it. They pushed forward against the storm, each step a battle against the wind. When they finally reached the shelter, Jackson pulled the heavy door open, ushering her inside. The moment they were safe, the weight of everything crashed into her. The fear, the pain, the truth she had been running from. Jackson knelt beside her, brushing damp hair from his forehead. You all right? Savannah looked at him, really looked at him, not as a ranch hand, not as someone beneath her, just as a man who had just saved her life, who had been kinder to her than anyone in her own family. Something inside her broke. I was wrong, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the storm outside. Jackson's brows furrowed. What? She took a shaky breath, forcing herself to meet his gaze. About everything. About you. About the way I was raised to see the world. Her chest tightened as the words poured out raw and real. I've been blind my whole life, and I didn't even know it. Jackson didn't speak for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he exhaled. It takes courage to admit that. Savannah swallowed the lump in her throat. I don't know who I am anymore. Jackson studied her, then said something that sent a chill through her. Maybe you're finally becoming who you were meant to be. Tears burned at the corners of her eyes. She had spent her whole life believing she was on the right side of the world, that her place, her privilege, was just the natural order of things. But now, sitting here, covered in dirt and rain, saved by the very man she once looked down upon, she knew she could never go back. Her family would never understand. Her friends would never accept it. But for the first time, that didn't matter. Savannah reached for Jackson's hand, gripping it tight. Thank you, she said, meaning it in more ways than one. Jackson nodded, his fingers warm against hers. You don't have to thank me, he said quietly. Just don't forget what you've learned tonight. She wouldn't. She couldn't. The storm may have passed, but Savannah Carter was forever changed. The storm had passed, leaving behind a quiet stillness that wrapped around the ranch like a soft embrace. The air smelled of wet earth and fresh beginnings, the sky painted in deep hues of twilight. Savannah stood by the wooden fence near the stables, her arms wrapped around herself, her heart still racing, not from fear, but from something far more overwhelming. Jackson stood beside her, silent, his gaze fixed on the horizon. The storm shelter had been a moment of survival, but this was something else entirely. The world around them had changed, but nothing had shifted more than the space between them. Savannah took a slow breath, her fingers tracing the rough wood beneath her hands. I don't know how to go back to the way things were, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't think I want to. Jackson glanced at her, his dark eyes unreadable. Then don't. She turned to face him fully, the weight of everything pressing against her chest. It's not that simple. It is, he said. You choose what kind of person you want to be. Savannah, no one makes that choice for you. She swallowed hard. And what if I choose you? The words hung between them, heavy, raw, vulnerable. Savannah had never spoken something so terrifying, so true. Jackson exhaled slowly, his hands flexing at his sides. You don't have to say that just because I saved you. She shook her head. This isn't about the storm, Jackson. This isn't about one moment. It's about all the moments I spent pretending you didn't matter. About all the times I looked at you and refused to see you. I was a coward, but I don't want to be anymore. Jackson studied her, his expression unreadable, but his silence spoke volumes. I've spent my whole life being told what love is supposed to look like, Savannah continued, her voice trembling, that it comes in a neat little package, wrapped in rules and expectations. But love isn't about skin color or family names. It's about this. She gestured between them, her heart pounding. It's about the way you look at me like I'm more than what I was raised to be. About the way I feel safer with you than I ever have with my own family. Jackson's jaw tightened, his eyes dark with emotion. You don't understand what you're risking. I do, she said, and I don't care. For the first time, Jackson looked unsure, as if the walls he had built to protect himself were starting to crack. This world doesn't change overnight. Savannah, people like your family, they don't just let go of what they believe. She stepped closer, the warmth of him grounding her, steadying her. Then let them hold on to the past, she whispered, because I'm choosing the future. Jackson reached for her then, his fingers brushing against hers before finally pulling her into his arms. Savannah melted into him, feeling the steady thrum of his heartbeat against her own. The last pieces of her old life shattered, and she let them fall away. She had been blind once, but now she saw the Carter estate had never felt smaller. The grand halls, the polished floors, the chandeliers that once symbolized power and legacy, all of it now felt suffocating. Savannah stood in the center of the dining room, facing her father, mother, and brother, their eyes filled with disbelief and something colder, disgust. You're throwing everything away, Henry Carter said, his voice sharp, controlled. For him, Savannah lifted her chin, her heart pounding but steady. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm choosing something real. Eleanor scoffed, shaking her head. Do you have any idea what this will do to our family? To our name? Savannah exhaled slowly, the weight of years pressing down on her, but not enough to make her buckle. Maybe our name isn't as important as we think it is, she said. Maybe it never was. William let out a bitter laugh. You really think people like and belong with us? Savannah didn't hesitate. I think people like us have been wrong for a long time. The silence was suffocating, but Savannah didn't run from it. She had spent her entire life avoiding discomfort, pretending not to see the truth. Not anymore. Get out, her father finally said, voice cold and final. If you walk out that door, you don't come back. Savannah's chest tightened, but she had already made her choice. Without another word, she turned and left. The Texas air felt different as she stepped outside. Freer. Jackson was waiting by the stables, leaning against a wooden post. His expression was unreadable, but when their eyes met, something softened. Didn't think you'd actually do it, he murmured. Savannah smiled, feeling the first breath of true relief fill her lungs. Guess I'm full of surprises. Jackson studied her for a long moment before nodding. You sure about this? She reached for his hand, gripping it tight. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The world behind her was filled with anger, with rejection, with a history she would never fully escape. But the future was standing right in front of her, and she was ready for it. The road stretched endlessly before her, the Texas horizon painted in shades of gold and fire as the sun began its slow descent. Savannah had always thought of this land as something she owned, something passed down to her like an inheritance. But now, she saw it differently. The world didn't belong to anyone. It simply was. And for the first time, she felt like she truly belonged to it. She had walked away from a life that once defined her, from the comfort of wealth, the safety of tradition, and the expectations that had shaped her every thought. It should have been terrifying, and in some ways it was. She had no idea what came next, but fear no longer controlled her. You thinking about turning back? Jackson's voice was quiet beside her, steady as always. Savannah turned to him, watching where the fading sunlight kissed his skin, the way he stood, strong, unwavering, real. She shook her head. No, I'm thinking about what comes next. Jackson nodded as if he understood. Maybe he did. He always seemed to. We'll figure it out, he said. Savannah reached for his hand, intertwining her fingers with his. Yeah, she murmured. We will. The past was behind her, but the lessons it had taught her would never leave. She had learned that love wasn't about where you came from, but where you were willing to go. That justice wasn't a word. It was a choice, and that sometimes the hardest thing you could ever do is let go of everything you thought was true. Have you ever had to challenge everything you believed? Let us know in the comments.